Hey, everybody, welcome back. It is a brand new edition of the notorious, world renowned Third and Lang podcast. And Matt, I know that you find this very hard to believe. We've lassoed a guest. It took us forever, cost us a lot of money and a lot of favors, but we actually have a guest tonight.
We pulled a lot of strings. This was the difficult one. He's a hard guy to get a hold of. He's very rambunctious. He's off the charts. He talks a lot. He's very just disruptive, and it was tough. It was tough to go out there and find him. It was like trying to lasso in a stallion, and we got him. I don't know how we did it, but we got him.
I don't either. Again, I want to welcome in at the very bottom right box there, if you will. If you're watching this, Jim Morrow, veteran head coach, joins us. Currently the head coach of the South Beloit Sobos.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. Glad to have you, Coach. And again, we talked just before we started recording about your coaching career. Obviously, quite a few years at Harlem. Then after a long extended stay at Harlem, you left. You went to, I think you said Beloit College first for a year?
Yes.
Or was it Belvedere and then Beloit College?
It was Beloit College for a season. And then I took the Belvedere head football coaching job, which was my alma mater. I played under Laverne Pottinger, and I thought the opportunity to go back and maybe help that program, and it was struggling. It still is a bit, and I thought that would be just a great calling. But unfortunately, I couldn't get the teaching to work out, and also unfortunately, that was our COVID spring. Yeah. So there was just a lot of chaotic situation there, and then the South Beloit opportunity came up, and I jumped at that, and it's been really good. It's my third year, and I think I definitely made the right move. I'm very happy with the way things are going, and can't say enough about the administration and all the support we get.
So walk us through your transition from, obviously coaching at a bigger high school level, getting a little taste of college, going back to the bigger high school level at Belvedere, and then 8-man football. Your initial reaction, did you already have somewhat of a knowledge of 8-man football? Was it something that was just completely foreign and you had to go do some research? Walk us through that process for you.
For the 8-man stuff, it was just all about, going on YouTube and finding some games and just kind of seeing what kind of concepts were they running. The one I really kind of fell in love with was Polo's offense because from what I knew of South Beloit, they really had the personnel to run option football in an 8-man style. And we kind of, when I got the job, we hit the ground running. We had a nice fullback, and we had to develop a quarterback who was a senior and probably had never taken a snap under center. But we worked with him, and he was willing. He was athletic enough and smart enough, patient enough to make those reads, and we just got better, every week. And we ended up taking him to the playoffs for the first time in 20 seasons, I believe.
Wow.
And we won our first round game against a team we had lost to in overtime back in week 3 or 4. And then we ended up winning that playoff game by 2 touchdowns on the road. And that was a great accomplishment for those guys. And just to see the transformation of the mindset that they could really step on the field and win football games, It's been an incredible thing. And, I think slowly, we're making more and more believers out of the community, and we're off to a really great start right now as well.
Matt?
Well, I'd just like to kind of add a couple of things too. I've talked to some people today, and from talking to the administrative staff at South Beloit, just talking to your athletic director, the community is buying in, and everybody's starting to kind of come back out to the games. I think that's a testament to you, Jim. I mean, you've done a great job. You're putting kids like in positions to excel. I kind of want to talk about that transition of like when you were at Harlem and you took over for Brian and you kind of evolved the game, after Brian left, and you did some things in terms of getting people in positions. Do you do that a little bit? Is that the mindset with your 8-man concept? You try to get people out on islands, try to get them in space. You're having a lot of success there, and everybody's buying in with the community and the school, and your numbers are going up. And so good job on that. But, could you just kind of comment on some of that stuff too?
Well, I think that's kind of the secret to being a successful 8-man coach is how do you do more with less? I mean, you've got less players to run misdirection, and you just got less to work with. And so what you really have to do is really be creative, understand who you need to get the ball to and figure out how to do that. We just put in schemes this week based on what happened to us last week. They took away one of our receivers, Des Hampton. He's got three catches on the year, but all 3 for touchdowns. And so we're starting to hand the ball off to him a little bit as well. So, he's got touchdowns rushing as well as kind of our receiver of sorts. But just like having them, take away any possibility of him touching the ball for an entire Friday night, get you back in the laboratory, and you start working on some things and you say, okay, we got to have an answer to that and come up with something. So it just seems like there's kind of a handful of things that come up every week like that you just never have thought of. And in the 8-man game, the thing I love about it is it's grown me as a coach in that you get to experiment with these short edges. When we split a guy out, sometimes the widest guy in the line of scrimmage is our guard. It is a lot of times, and what do you do to that? Well, there's some tremendous advantages because you can turn the corner awfully quick when all you got to do is run outside the 3 technique. And then, what do you do, in unbalanced and how do you put people in, in compromising positions and get +1 at the point of attack when you're only dealing with, a limited number of players. And it's really, if I ever, return to the 11-man game, I feel like I'll be a much better coach as a result of my 8-man experience.
Well, and that's where I was going to go with this, Jim. Next is you mentioned if you return to the 8-man game. I mean, is that a goal? Is that a goal of the football program in South Beloit, or are you just taking what you have now and getting it going? Because I don't know, Coach. It seems like more and more people I talk to, more and more of the coaches embrace the 8-man game. I don't think they're in a big hurry to run back to 11. That as you mentioned, they're seeing the real benefits and the fun. Are you having as much? I mean, have you had more fun than you're having these last couple of years in 8-man?
I'm absolutely having more fun. I mean, I kind of pictured my entire career being spent at Harlem, but I felt like after 15 years as the head coach, I was extremely burned out. I didn't feel like I was growing. I didn't like, I just was tired of feeling like life was passing me by, like, because it's such an enormous animal to ride constantly. It's just, there's just so much like, and there's a lot just being head coach of an 8-man program. But, I had to step away and make some changes in my life and find some balance. And it was just a necessity because I wasn't handling the anxiety very well and my health was paying for it. And so I just made the decision to step away. And it was difficult because my identity is so wrapped up in it.
Right.
I mean, 15 years as head coach, another 10 as an assistant, and seeing that program go from the longest losing streak in the state of Illinois, 47 games at one point, to having Brian Benning come in and, and put us on a path of, one of the longest playoff streaks in the state of Illinois as far as appearances. My identity was really wrapped up into it. And I just feel like, that I read a Tony Dungy quote this week where, he said, football is a great vocation, but it's not a life. And it was slowly becoming my life. And I just felt like I needed to do some other things and make some changes. And so going to Beloit College and becoming a college assistant was definitely, a great experience. I learned a ton. I didn't necessarily like the entire Saturday bus rides and everything like that that's involved in the college game, but I really was interested in the recruiting part and the whole operations of it. And it was difficult for me to come back into an assistant's role and just kind of be, a role guy and not have the voice that I've had, in the past. And so when I left for Belvedere, I think we gave those seniors a tremendous experience. We broke a losing streak that they had. And then COVID came and then it just wasn't working out with my teaching responsibility still at Harlem and trying to make that track to Belvedere and things like that. So South Beloit was much better local location for me. And it's been a wonderful balance. I can enjoy my summers. The one thing I really do like about it is the lack of no 7-on-7s,
Yeah.
So burnt out on getting on the school buses and going into the suburbs and getting our kids competition. And it's a necessity of some sort. Maybe I put an overvalue on it, but I don't miss that part at all. And, last game we didn't throw a single pass. We're just
Nice. Matt?
But,
Well, Jim, what I was going to say, when I've talked to two people over the last week and a half, and they've both said that they both word for word said this. They said, after 5 minutes of 8-man football, you don't really realize, you just realize you're just watching ball, and ball is ball. One of those individuals is Patrick Elder down at Ridgewood, who has a really good team. And in 2 weeks, I'm going to go watch them play against Amboy. And then I'll watch you later on in the year when you come down to Milford. We have some really good 8-man teams down here, Tim. St. Thomas More is a really good football team this year. And then the other person that I talked to was a guy by the name of Drew Potoff. And in 2002, he won a state championship there. And so to all of our viewers, the Sobos have not been back in the playoffs until Jim Morrow arrived on the scene. And so I guess what I want to ask you is that, when did you have that kind of that aha moment, where you're sitting there and you're just kind of, it's 3 minutes into the game or it's 3 minutes into the second half. When did you have that aha moment that this is just football, and maybe it gets a bad rap because it's 8-man, what if it was different? It was 9-man. Would it be different? But when did you have that moment where he's just like, hey, ball is ball?
It was such a foreign thing to me. I would say if you would have asked me 5 years ago about 8-man football, I think I would have probably scoffed at it. Like, that's not real football. But going into that first game, and just, I think the first 4 or 5 minutes, like all of a sudden it was just like, okay, like, here we go. Like, the thing about it is, Matt, is if you like, we all love football, and the 8-man game really does really kind of whittle it down to just, some things that an 11-man game cannot give you. First of all, it's a narrower field, and you can't hide as an 8-man football player out there. Like, there's nobody to cover up your mistake. There's nowhere to run. Like, you have to play, and you have to play physical, or you're going to get it handed to you. And just those scenarios where there can't be any weak links, or it's going to be a long night. They're going to find you right away because, it's just it's not hard, when you only got 8 guys to kind of look out there and find. So, I mean, I think within the first 5 minutes, like, it was just like, it was like I'd done it forever, like, it was just like being at Harlem or wherever, Belvedere again. It was just, just coaching the kids up and having fun with it.
How many phone calls do you get during the year about 8-man football? How many of your brethren do you hear from? And have the tone of those calls changed at all over the last year or two?
Nobody really calls me. I get a lot of questions, from people I run into, but I mean, I get a lot of questions, but I mean, I just tell them what a blast it is. And, they have a lot of questions about the game and strategy, like who are the tight ends, who are the tackles, like how does that work, who's eligible. And then you briefly explain it to them, and I try to get them to come out, and the ones that do always keep coming back because it's such a fun product to watch.
Yeah, the reason I asked about the tone is because it's obvious that, number one, it's here to stay. Number two, it's growing and continues to grow. And Matt, I don't see that changing. I see it continuing to add numbers as things move along. Jim, do you get that feeling as well?
I do. And, having coached at Belvedere, kind of a larger enrollment school, but doesn't really generate a lot of football players out for their football program. I can't believe that there's not going to be in the future kind of a larger enrollment 8-man league of some sorts. To try to put 11 guys on the field, and you're kind of looking at putting in freshmen and sophomores. I mean, it's a no-win for everybody. I could see how the 8-man game could benefit programs such as some of the ones that I see, the larger enrollment programs in the state line area.
Chicago Public League, just to start, where they're getting 250 kids for freshman basketball, but they're fighting to get 15, 20 kids for freshman football. Can you get those 15, 20, maybe combine them with a couple other classes and play a form of 8-man football? Jim, that was my thought when all this came together. And I saw that as well, where, hey, you can have different enrollment levels of 8-man. Now, I don't know how that goes against the vision of all this and how that matters. I'm not sure, but I'm with you. I could see that happening as well. Matt?
Well, I'm glad you allowed me to kind of come in here because, we had a game down here last weekend, and one of our city schools got beat 92-0 by Peoria Central.
Yeah.
And I will just say this, that, when I talked to your athletic director today, Jim, one of the things he said was that you and the product and the excitement and the concept has increased the numbers. Now, before games, you don't have a bunch of kids hanging out in the gymnasium shooting basketballs. You have them outside getting ready to play football, and they're getting excited about football. And I think what we need to understand, what you guys two are alluding to, is that 8-man, as different as it maybe comes across, it's saving football programs, because I think it'd be safe to say that if you didn't have 8-man football, I don't know if you'd have football right now at South Beloit, because we know what type of teams you have up there in that power conference. And now you're allowing kids to be successful, to be safe, and to have a lot of fun and bring the community and the school into it and build an immense source of pride, which is kind of what your athletic director was talking about today. And so, don't you? Those are my thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Matt. And it gives struggling programs that aren't generating a lot of players out for their sport to have a chance to resuscitate.
And maybe just add where your numbers have been at, Jim, because you've talked to me about that. Let the viewers know. Let Tim know. It's amazing. It's congratulations to you.
I was hired in my first year, not till the end of June. So we managed to get 22 guys that wanted to play, and we grew that the second year to 28, and then this third year we have 40.
Yeah.
And for the first time, we're not in that compromising position of having to play a freshman or sophomore that's not ready, because it doesn't work well for them. To put them against grown seniors is just it's a bad situation to be in. And for the first time, we've kind of gotten the chance to avoid that. And, we hope we can continue the growth in that regard.
Have you talked to, and I'm not even 100% sure, your friends to the north? Has there ever been talk in, say, Wisconsin about maybe going that route at all, or is it still kind of just a different beast up in the Wisconsin part?
Wisconsin does have quite a few 8-man programs.
Okay.
I think Isaiah Loudermilk of the Pittsburgh Steelers played for an 8-man school up in Wisconsin.
Awesome.
We did schedule last year because of of a cancellation, we scheduled a team, Easton Valley out of Iowa, who was
Right.
very, very talented. Iowa,
Iowa's been playing it for a while.
yeah, and you can tell.
And
Yeah, I
guys,
bet.
and I have a question I want to ask both of you, and I think Tim, you'd probably have the answer to this, and Jim, you probably would too. But without sounding too critical, I mean, don't you think that Illinois, in some aspects, has kind of been behind in this whole philosophy? When you think of the Iowa, the Wisconsin, Kansas, Wyoming, Texas, I mean, everybody else kind of seems like they've had some sort of variation of 8-man, or in some cases, 6-man football. And now we're just kind of arriving on the scene. I wanted to know what your guys' thoughts were on that.
Well, sometimes the good things come out of the necessity of having to do it. And, you know,
COVID
like
changed a lot of things. A
like you
lot
said,
of
when you're
things.
faced with, no football at all,
Yep.
or modifying your vision and go into an 8-man format, it's a no-brainer. You got to keep it.
And another Jim, another huge aspect of 8-man that I absolutely love. We're talking about towns that might have athletic programs that are 100 years old, and they've been playing sports forever. And let's face it, we live in a state where unfortunately the last decade plus more leaving than coming in.
Yeah.
So a lot of these towns are getting smaller, and the enrollments are getting smaller. But these 100-plus-year-old schools are able to keep their identity because of 8-man football. They're able to play and compete. And you guys know this as well as I do. There's a lot of these towns and people, there's an incredible amount of pride in those programs. They don't want to co-op if they don't have to. So I think 8-man, again, is helping those programs stay alive and compete.
Yeah, absolutely. We just played a JV game at Alden Hebron Monday, and that's like one of those schools that you walk into the place and the tradition is just soaking into your skin. Just the pictures, and the gym is right out of 1952, and the water tower with commemorating the basketball championships, and there's just a lot of pride. And and I'm glad that this opportunity has presented itself for these schools to continue to play, and it's a blast.
Well, and I would just say, I mean, I think anytime you talk about athletics, I mean, this is the sappy side of me coming out. We're always trying to have something in the sport that enriches the educational process. And you talk to the admins, the bosses, the CEOs of the schools. I can remember talking to Matt Plater at Havana. It's on the western side of the state. There's a eroding population. Havana's doing fine. They're good in numbers. This is not a knock towards Havana or anything like where I was at, but I did ask him one time when I went down there to take the job. I was like, what are your thoughts if numbers, eroding population, lead us to a situation where we have to think about 8-man? And he looked me right in the eye. He's like, when we come to that decision, we'll talk about it and discuss it. But he's like, I can tell you one thing: every community deserves Friday night football. And that's the thing. I mean, it is your front porch of your school. It starts the school year off well. Discipline problems usually go down, morale goes up high when you're fairly decent and competitive and doing well in football. And there's no statistical study out there about that, but that's just the bare facts.
Jim, what would you like to see changed as far as the 8-man side? What kind of progression would you like to see 8-man and that association take next? What's the next couple of steps in your opinion?
Well, I know that the talks have been had in regards to the IHSA taking the 8-man game under their wing, and I think we would probably welcome that, and just having that under their umbrella. We kind of abide by all of their regulations and rules anyways. So I just think it would give, it would legitimize the 8-man game as not just some renegade federation of schools that are doing their own thing.
See, I like that just a little bit, a little bit.
Cool. That's cool.
little bit of the swashbuckling pirate, just a little bit.
Tim loves the wild, wild west kind of
I do.
Okay, he does.
Just a little.
He needs like a pirate patch and like a sword and like a Indiana Jones whip or something, man.
Please don't tempt me. I'll end up wearing a pirates thing next week. So.
Just do it.
Jim, I'd be shocked if you guys didn't go IHSA. I think it's going to happen probably sooner rather than later. And I've heard that from multiple people. That it's just a matter of time.
Yeah.
Hey, Jim, real quick, if they did take it over, I mean, what are your thoughts about the game being played with the other schools on that Friday after Thanksgiving, or keeping it the way you've been keeping it? Because I have not been to Monmouth College, but I hear it is bonkers, bananas, crazy, awesome, intense, really unique setting.
Yeah, I think we would like to kind of keep our same format, which is a 1 through 16 playoff format, top 16 teams making it. And, we like the seeding of it. We don't seem to mind, some of the travel that we have to do in order to do that. But, and then having that 1 week shortened playoff run, in which our state championship actually comes the Thursday before Thanksgiving, or the Friday night before Thanksgiving. So just having that, wrap up at that time, it just seems perfect. And, give the spotlight to the 8-man game for that one night. And, don't create an odd number of state championship games for the weekend.
Yeah, you had me at everything, and all you had to do was throw in, and we're going to play a first round Wednesday game, and I would be totally on board.
That would go back to my high school days.
Mine too. Here, there's my
Me
idea.
too. It was the greatest.
Yeah,
Sure.
But I like what you said about keeping a special day for 8-man football. Absolutely need to do that. You do not want this sport to get lost up in the mix with everyone else, because you know what? It is unique, and it needs to be treated that way. I totally agree with that.
Me too.
Matt, do you have something for Jim before I start digging into the Nick 10?
Well, no, Jim, there are a couple things, I talked to some people today, obviously your athletic director has a lot of great things to say about you. Says it was obviously one of the best hires he's ever made. He just goes on and on and on about your work ethic. Drew Potoff is really impressed. And I've shared this with Tim, that I've seen you talk and speak at the coaching clinic. When I see Jim Unruh taking notes at your coaching clinic, I think that's a big deal. And I will just take it a step further that, every time I bring your name up to coaches now that are at the 11-man, that are going to 8-man, they speak nothing but great things about you. But there was one more important person I talked to today, and that was Brian Benning. And he was on the golf course, of course, today, and had to tell me that he was swinging the golf clubs. And, but one of the things that he said to me was like, when he took over a floundering Harlem football program, you were the first guy to reach out to him and said, I want to coach, and I'll do whatever it takes. And, and he found out real quick in the first 2 or 3 years that he describes you as a person that's, driven to excel, and that you are organized in every aspect of it. Within 2 years, you were the offensive coordinator, and that he said that, when he left Harlem to go to Dakota, he was not going to go to Dakota to do that for his kids unless he told the administration that, hey, I'm highly recommending Jim Morrow to be the head football coach at Harlem. He was convinced that you would take it to the next level, which you did. And, the thing I asked him, I was like, if you had to wrap up something about Jim Morrow, how would you describe him? And he's like, well, I don't want to get too corny or crazy here, but it's kind of like this golf game that I'm doing. And I can kind of compare it to a golf game. And he told me, he's like, and it was funny because he hit the drive, and I'm hearing the swing, and then he's like, oh man, I killed it. I'm on the green, and I got a birdie putt. But anyway, he's like, I love golf so much, and he goes, but I think about golf when I think about Jim Morrow, and he goes, good is not good enough if better is possible. And he goes, that's the epitome of Jim Morrow. He will look over every stone, cover everything, know everything about what he needs to do. He's driven to excel. And I just think that speaks volumes of you. And I can't believe that I got to coach with you in that 1 year at Harlem. And, you know,
Uh,
there's a lot of people that say a lot of great things about you, Jim.
that's high praise from some coaching legends for sure. And I'm very honored to just have had any kind of association with them, and the opportunities that Brian Benning gave me. Unbelievable for somebody who, you know, had nothing to offer other than his drive and enthusiasm. And, you know, I appreciate that man tremendously. And I can remember me as a young coach following Jim Morrow around the coaching circuits. And I would be in the front row of every one of his talks, just picking his brain. And,
Well, I think our viewers need to know that he was in the front row of your talk. And
well, what an
I'm
honor.
telling
all I
you,
can
Tim,
say.
like the look on Jim Hunter's face, he stood up and I was kind of standing there. He's like, man, this is a smart, sharp coach that we're talking to tonight. And those
I
guys
learned
really
more
think
from
the world
him
of you,
than
Jim.
he would ever learn from me. So that's just high praise. That's awesome. But yeah, I'm just blessed to have had the people in my life to help me along in my journey. So, and Matt, you're one of those guys, you know, like I thoroughly enjoyed meeting you down. I think it was at the El Paso McDonald's, and for the first time drawing up wing tee plays at the table.
And I still have the book. I still have the Bible that you gave me, and all the coaching terms, you know, from open the door, punch the midget on pulling guards to down kick to.
I'm pretty sure that was a Jim Unruh thing.
Yeah.
I probably stole it from him. But no, to see you now, Matt, is the Adam Schefter of Illinois small school football. It's pretty awesome.
Love it. Perfect.
Pretty awesome thing.
Change my profile page there. Do it.
There we go.
I love it. I love it.
Go.
Thank you so much. I love doing it. And I love talking to those guys about you, you know, from Drew Potoff to your AD to Brian Benning. And real quick, I'm sorry, Tim, but like just Jim, I mean, you don't need to ramble too much, but I mean, who are the kind of your influences? Obviously, Coach Pottinger, Brian Benning, anybody else?
Yeah, those two guys you really put me on my journey for sure, especially Coach Pottinger. As a high school kid who had no idea what he was going to do, and I was not the most athletic kid, and I hardly played, but the experience was so life-changing. You know, I kind of ended up following this road, and to have Coach Benning come and take the job at Harlem and give me the opportunities was invaluable. And just, you know, just guys like anybody who had anything to offer along the way, and I absorbed, you know, like the Jim Monroes and Rich Infusinos. And I've worked with a number of older assistant coaches. Like right now I've got Steve Wallstrom on staff that are just they have so much wisdom. They've worked for some really great people. And I just continue to love the learning process and embrace it. And for me to list all the people that have influenced me would just be impossible, but very honored, very blessed.
Before, Jim, I start running down memory lane a little bit. Talk about this year's team. Talk about some of the kids that have stepped up and had really big years for you this year. Who would those be?
Well, I'd like to start at the quarterback, Caden Myers, who is just putting up some unbelievable numbers. Through 3 games, he's got 31 carries, 700 yards, 10 touchdowns. He's averaging 23 yards a carry. So, I mean, we're not going to lose if that continues. I can only hope. But he runs our triple option system so well. He gets around the edge after he pulls that ball from the B-back, and he's just off to the races. And there's not a lot of depth in 8-man football defenses. So, just getting to that linebacker level, if they can't make the tackle, there's really nobody there to back him up. And so it's a great system for him to run for us. He's just a little guy, he's 5'8", 140 pounds, but he plays, like a stud. He's thrown for 4 touchdowns, and he's probably the number one threat for teams to take away. And complimenting him as a senior tailback, Noah Zwirnes, he's averaging 14 yards a carry, 23 carries for 313 yards, 7 touchdowns. I know a lot of those come off pitches from Caden in the triple option. Some counter trays in which our triple option kind of sets up. And, he's having a great year and put in a great off season for us. And that's really showing up out there. And then Des Hampton, who, he plays one of our tight end sorts, but we flex him quite a bit and try to get him in space and do some things. But, he's as talented as he is, 3 touchdowns on 3 catches. It's just about every time he touches the ball, it goes to the house. So, it's my job to make sure we can get him the ball a little bit more regularly from that position. But we have given him the ball 5 times, and he's rushed for another 100 yards and another touchdown. And of course, all these guys play defense as well and playing pretty well in that regard. And we just have a lot of guys who are really good at playing their role and to help us be successful. And just an unselfish group that is just a pleasure to coach.
Awesome. So one of the things I wanted to ask you and get your thoughts on, and I've been a banging the drum guy for a long time regarding, number one, I can't stand our current geographical playoff system. I'm a huge fan of 1 through 32, have been for a long time. And the other thing I'm not a big fan of are locked conferences. Don't like them. Don't like them at all. You obviously played in a locked conference in the NIC. I'm sure you saw a lot of the same playoff teams when you made the playoffs. You saw a lot of familiar faces year in and year out. Your thoughts on being in a locked conference, advantage, disadvantage, and then as far as the state playoff system, I mean, I thought we passed 1 through 32. That obviously is not going to happen now. Just your general thoughts about that entire side of the whole playoff system for the larger schools.
As far as the conferences, having played in the NIC 10 and then coached for so many years in the NIC 10, I still look at it and I think, how can we still have the same conference but the schools have changed so tremendously.
Right.
I mean, there's no competitive balance. We're lucky. They're lucky to have, one competitive game, every Friday. And then, a lot of lopsided scores and a lot of teams with, I don't know, like I just don't see the opportunity for them really to change anything other than the status quo, which is pretty hopeless. So
yeah,
I would like to hope that at some point in time, something would shake up and give them somewhat of a competitive, more of a competitive balance somewhere. And they experimented with such a thing during the COVID spring.
Right. Yeah. I actually covered Harlem playing Prairie Ridge. So,
yeah.
And they thought both
those
sides
games
was great.
If there was one thing that, I certainly could be criticized for in my time at Harlem is we had a difficult time winning first round playoff games. For as many as we got to, we didn't win enough in my estimations. And maybe some of that is just because every week, we'd have a few key games. We'd have Boylan, we'd have Hononegah.
Right.
Outside of some of those schools, unless somebody was really good that year, it was just a lot of, not as intense, not the competition you would need to really do well outside the conference. And
out of those playoff opponents, how many were conference opponents in round 1?
Well, quite often, I'd say at least half the time.
Which I can't stand. So
for sure.
Do you think that? Sorry to interrupt, guys. I was just going to say, do you think that makes Jim? I mean, I guess I'm directing this question to you. Do you think that makes football in our state kind of on a slippery slope in terms of the healthiness of us? I don't know if that's the word to use, because I mean, I know down here, in the Big 12, we got everything from Danville and Bloomington to Peoria to Urbana. We kind of have some haves and have-nots, like you would up there in the NIC 10. And so I just didn't know, like, if you think that's an unhealthy thing, and if that's something that really needs to be changed. I mean, like you said earlier in the broadcast, like like we're going to have to make a decision maybe if we can do something to bring or foster 8-man into some of these schools, because nothing's really going to change. Nothing's going to change.
I think that's definitely like something that can be explored, but I know anybody in the LAC conference, you're going to have a hard time getting away from that just because the scheduling. They like that 10 team lock in which they don't have to go hunt for opponents. They don't have to get on a bus and
I get it.
Car.
I get it.
I get it too, and and it's hard to find opponents. To open up that can of worms, I get it. It's just I don't know what the answer is. Actually.
Yeah, no, I'm with you. Like I said, I just want to see, especially the geographic side, because I mean, you have it up in your part of the state, and and it's not even a geographic thing. I mean, you want an example of being highly competitive. Look at the smaller 1A, 2A schools in your area. They'll get much more competitive than the NUIC. I mean, that thing's a beast. So there's
Absolutely.
a case where you have very similar schools, terrific programs. I mean, highly competitive week in and week out. You've got schools, Jim, that end up with losing records that I'm sure could wind up being playoff teams and winning a couple of rounds, depending upon the year. So again, it's possible. I really don't think it's a one geographic area is not as good as the other. I think every geographic area has good years and bad years, and when you're all lumped together in the same spot every year, playing the same damn teams every year, I don't think it's healthy. So
yeah, I do remember a short period of time in which the Nick 10 had some sort of scheduling agreement with the Madison schools, Sun Prairie, Follett, some
Beloit,
of
those,
Beloit, and that I think that was a pretty neat deal.
Madison,
whether anything like that could ever happen again, I don't know. But
yeah, yep. Well, great, Matt. Anything for Coach?
Well, Jim, I think we should get EDGYTIM involved in this, and I think we should just go over our favorite rock. What
did I do now?
Now we're gonna try to get into that rattled brain of yours and just
there's not much left.
What people don't realize about Jim Morrow is he is an extremely well-versed individual at music tastes. One of my best experiences is going to the Metro Center in Rockford, Illinois, to watch the Kiss concert. And me and Jim were having a few beverages of choice, and we were on the camera that was going around the building. And the next day, and this is like my second week at Harlem High School, I had a student that came up to me and said, "Hey, were you and Coach Morrow at the Kiss concert last night?" And I go, "Yes, I am." And here's a kid that basically told me to kiss off about a week ago, and I had to throw him an in-school suspension. Nice. But after he knew I was at the Kiss concert with Jim Morrow, he's like, "You guys are my favorite teachers of all time."
That's awesome.
We gotta get that street cred, Matt.
So Jim, I'm going to tell you right now, before the mustache turned gray, I am not Buddy Carlos from Cheap Trick. Okay, I'm just going to tell you right now. Been accused of that more than a few times, but
and Robin Zander, Harlem High School graduate. So yeah, now you're talking.
Right.
But Tim, we just want to know your favorite rock groups, because for Jim and I, it's Tesla. It's Guns N' Roses, which Jim has rocked out the kilt like Axl Rose. He has done that before. And Kiss.
Saw Guns N' Roses at a club in Chicagoland, in Schaumburg, of all places, before they broke out. I saw Def Leppard when they were 17 years old on their first American tour, opening for the Scorpions. I was at Castle Donington one year, which is now Download over in England. I was maybe one of the first 10 Americans on the new wave of new British heavy metal. Go way back.
Okay.
Go way back.
We're definitely going to have to, hook up outside of this podcast.
So Jim, besides Tesla, I mean, who else do you like, man? I mean, come on, talk to us, man.
I'm a huge Tesla fan. I've seen them probably 75 times, and that's
still actually good.
Not an exaggeration.
To this day, I saw them 2 years ago. They're still a very good band.
they're amazing. I love them. And but the band I really like the most recent kind of thing is a band called Blue October. I just absolutely love those guys and see them whenever I can.
Okay.
Big fan of those guys. I love their music, and yeah, I love to rock and roll, man. And
Yeah.
the 8-man game
Okay,
gives me more
so
opportunities.
Jim, if you were to form a band, what would you do? Would you be the lead singer, running up around? You know, Tim, what would you be? Would you be bass guitar?
I couldn't
drums?
carry it. I couldn't carry a tune with a handle if it had a handle on it. Okay.
Would you be soundboard?
Yeah, for sure. I'm back. I'm road crew. There's no doubt.
Jim,
For
what would
sure.
you be? Lead singer, lead guitar?
I'd probably have to be the lead guy.
There you
Or
go.
lead singer. I'd have to run the show.
I just run the guitar. I'd run the guitar and show off the guns.
Best live show you ever seen?
Best live show I've ever seen.
Yep.
I was just thinking about this show the other day, so I think I probably have to go with it. But Def Leppard on their Hysteria tour at Alpine Valley.
Yeah.
Alpine Valley. It was
Yeah.
amazing.
Right, you and 40,000 of your friends at Alpine Valley.
For sure. I love those things.
My favorite part of Alpine Valley was when they let out. They would just send you in any direction. And this was pre-GPS. You could have been driving to Iowa if you didn't know.
Bower Road.
Yep.
3 hours.
Yep.
Trying to get out of there.
How about you, Tim?
For me, it's got one of the top all times was, believe it or not, Alpine Valley. It was Kiss as the headliner, because that was the first time I saw Kiss. We were second row center. By the way, the best friend back in the day to have was your best friend's mom was the Ticketron lady at Sears. Okay? Let that rattle around in your head a little bit. So we got great tickets for shows because of her. I mean, they went on sale. She was a lady. So
yeah.
The show started. I did not see my friend who was right next to me. I didn't see him for 3 songs because of the smoke and the fog and the lights and the bombs and everything. I mean, I like Kiss. I wasn't the hugest Kiss fan in the world. But you talk about a show. I got it after that. It's like, okay, I totally get it now. These guys are show-wise were just unbelievable. And that was the big money days when they were putting everything in the shows and big time productions. That, and then I saw Metallica at Day in the Green in San Francisco.
Ooh, nice.
Yeah, and there was a little band again called Guns N' Roses that was below them on the dais, and I saw that, and that was just unbelievable. So I was a huge Metallica fan as well growing up. So
maybe we'll catch the Guns show down in St. Louis Saturday.
Yeah.
Let's go road trip.
I've got a friend of mine going out to California in October for was it Power
Man 5,000? Yeah.
No. It's a show. AC/DC's headlining.
Oh yeah, I saw that.
Yeah. It's Power something out in California in October. So he's going out there, wanted me to go, but hey, football calls. You guys know that.
Right.
So
for sure.
But, wow, see, we'll just cut this up and do a whole other separate music podcast. We could totally.
I told you, man. He's very dynamic.
Awesome.
I told you.
Awesome. All right, so now what I have to do is now that Jim, I've got your email, I'm going to start throwing stuff your way, some different bands and stuff that I listen to, and I am admittedly guilty of going into deep dives on YouTube, finding rare concert stuff from bands a long time ago. It's amazing some of the stuff you can stumble upon. So,
oh yeah, one of the things I've been doing is I went and saw a terrible show in Aurora at the Piazza of Puddle and Mud.
Yeah.
But I've gone on YouTube and I can't believe how many songs I love, even though
I know
the show was tremendously bad.
Well, that lead singer's a trip, allegedly. Yeah. He's a piece of work from what they all say. So
yeah.
But Tim, what is your
got some problems.
Here's my best story about EDGYTIM. He is in his studio right here, and all of a sudden he goes, "Hey, I got to go upstairs." He goes upstairs and his phone rings and it's freaking disturbed on his phone.
Yeah.
No.
I've
he
known
comes
those
down.
guys. I've known
He comes
those guys.
downstairs and he's just like, hey, sorry, I had to go upstairs and, feed the dog or whatever. I'm like, dude, are you rocking out to Disturbed? So
Yep.
can you
Edgy, I
please
never
tell
knew
us
you
your
had so
connection
much
with Disturbed?
edge to you. I mean,
Nickname had to come from somewhere.
metal edge.
What's your connection to Disturbed, EDGYTIM?
I've known them since they played at JJ Kelly's in Lansing. I mean, they were an up and coming band, still like a garage band, and I've known those guys, and I've been following them ever since. And they're great guys, and got to know them. And yeah, it's funny because Dan Donegan's from Homer Glen, so he's relatively close to where I live, and a lot of those guys, Chicagoland connections, big time. So they pretty much, everyone pretty much considers them a Chicago area band, Chicagoland band. So, and they still kind of proudly that they call Chicagoland home. So, yeah. Yep. So we got a lot to talk about. Jim, this is great. Appreciate it. I know, again, we become big fans of 8-Man. We're going to continue to be big fans of 8-Man, and, definitely help your cause and help your guys' cause and continue to blow this thing up a bit. And you ever need anything from us, you let me know. That's no hesitation. We'd be glad to help you guys for sure.
All right, guys. Thanks for having me on. It was a blast. A lot of fun.
All right.
Yeah, Jim. Thanks a lot.
We will cut you loose. We appreciate it. Have a good night, and we will talk to you very soon, I'm sure.
All right, guys. Have a good one.
All right, Jim. All right. I just kicked him out of the room. You like how I can do that? I hope I can bring him back.
That's I told you, man, he is a dandy, and he is when I started my career at Fisher, Jim would come down. He would help me incorporate a thing called the jet sweep that I didn't quite understand how to really put in.
Nice.
And I thought that was rocket science. And he's just a wonderful guy. I still have the Bible and the notes that he gave me at the El Paso McDonald's. And then I went up there when I was making that move from Rantoul all the way up to Rockford, or Bloomington at the time, all the way up to Rockford. And I basically stayed at Brian Benning's house for 3 weeks in the summer. And I got a football baptism, baptism by fire with Jim Morrow and Brian Benning, and the rest is history.
All right. I know you had all kinds of stuff planned, but I had a feeling we were going to go along with Coach
No, that's
Morrow.
great. No, this
is there wonderful. Anything you want to get to before we wrap this up, or no?
No, I mean, I think I went and watched a really good game. I think, as we get into week 3, 4, and 5, we're into week 4 now. I think we're going to see some really good games. I'm going to go watch
a lot of conference plays beginning. We're getting into conference play now.
Yeah, and I think we'll have a lot more to talk about in week 5. I mean, Monticello has a big game this Friday night against Bloomington Central Catholic. I just think there's going to be some really good football being played. I think in the 1A, I think you're starting to see some teams flex their muscles. Arthur Lovington, Leroy, BJ Zalesnik has a son by the name of Bo Zalesnik that's really good. And I talked to Camp Point Central, and I'll save that stuff for later. Brad Dixon really likes his team.
Yeah, awesome. Sounds good. Again, I want to thank Jim Morrow and thank you, Matt, for lining him up. Again, guy that I've watched for a long time. I'm very well aware of him when he was at Harlem and did nice work at Harlem. And, again, now you could tell he's like almost reborn with 8-Man. He is. He's having fun.
And he is very much, if you could think of the calmest, mellow coach.
Yep. That's him.
Pre-game, and on the sidelines. I mean, the only thing I could think of maybe is Jim Tressel, maybe, kind of just that buttoned up, just very calm. I mean, Tressel would have his moments, but just, I'm telling you, it's kind of remarkable to watch because Jim is dry humor. He is very soft-spoken, but
well, you know where he lets it go. Rock and roll, baby.
Rock and roll, baby. No, that's a great.
And I can relate to.
Man, I can relate. That was good stuff.
Sure. All right. Well, we'll wrap it up for this edition. If anyone's still left watching this after 54 minutes, but for Matt Leng, EDGYTIM here. We'll be back next week. We'll have a more traditional show for you, and we'll go over the week 4 results and week 5 preview and everything else. So, all right, Matt, we'll let you go. That's going to do it, everybody. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week.